Emily Parker had always believed in the power of kindness. It wasn't something she talked about often, it was just who she was. Every morning, she arrived at St. Vincent's Hospital before sunrise, ready to care for her patients with unwavering dedication. At just 24 years old, Emily was one of the youngest nurses on staff, but her calm demeanor and gentle touch made her stand out. Her favorite patient, or rather, the one who needed her most, was Alexander Hartwell. Alexander was a name everyone at the hospital knew, though not because of his condition. Before the accident, he'd been a millionaire, a man whose name appeared in newspapers and magazines alongside headlines about his business empire and lavish lifestyle. But now, he lay motionless in a private room on the 4th floor, trapped in a coma after a devastating car crash months earlier. To some, caring for someone like Alexander might have felt intimidating. After all, he came from a world so different from Emily's own. A world of luxury penthouses, private jets, and endless wealth. But to Emily, he was simply a person who needed help. Every day, she bathed him carefully, ensuring his skin stayed clean and free of irritation. She brushed his hair, trimmed his nails, and even shaved his face when stubble began to grow. Beyond the physical care, she spoke to him as if he were awake. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell," she'd say cheerfully, opening the blinds to let sunlight stream into the room. "It's another beautiful day outside. The birds are singing, and I think spring is finally here." Sometimes, she'd read books aloud, classics like Pride and Prejudice or poems by Robert Frost. Other times, she'd share stories about her own life, how she dreamed of becoming a doctor someday, despite the financial struggles that made it seem impossible. "You wouldn't believe how hard it is to juggle school loans and rent," she admitted one afternoon, adjusting the 4-drip beside his bed. "But I won't give up. Not until I've earned that degree." The other nurses teased her occasionally, calling her Hopeful Emily, because of her insistence that Alexander could hear her. "He's in a coma, one of them said gently one day. "He's not going to respond, no matter how much you talk." But Emily didn't listen. Deep down, she believed her voice mattered, that somehow, her words reached him in the darkness. And so, she kept talking, kept hoping, kept believing. Little did she know, her faith would soon be rewarded in ways she never imagined. Emily's life outside the hospital was far from glamorous, but it shaped the person she had become: resilient, compassionate, and determined. Growing up in a small apartment with her single mother, she'd learned early on that dreams didn't come easily. Her mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, often reminding Emily that education was her ticket to a better future. "I don't care what you study," her mom used to say, "as long as you're happy doing it." And Emily was happy, at least when she was helping others. From volunteering at community clinics during high school to working part-time as a nursing assistant while attending college, she'd always found joy in making people feel cared for. But happiness didn't pay the bills, and Emily's dream of becoming a doctor came with a hefty price tag. Student loans piled higher than she ever imagined. Still, she refused to give up. At St. Vincent's Hospital, Emily poured every ounce of energy into her work. While some nurses breezed through their shifts, treating patients like tasks to check off a list, Emily took her time. She believed that even the smallest acts of kindness could make a difference, and Alexander Hartwell became her ultimate test of that belief. On days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she reminded herself why she kept going. "He deserves respect," she told herself firmly one evening after a particularly grueling shift. "Just because he can't respond doesn't mean he isn't human." So she continued caring for him, not just physically, but emotionally too. One rainy afternoon, she brought in a portable speaker and played Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, knowing Alexander had once mentioned loving classical music during an interview she'd watched online. As the melody filled the room, she sat beside his bed, holding his hand lightly. "You know, I've never really understood classical music," she confessed with a soft laugh. "But this piece is beautiful. Maybe someday when you wake up, we can listen to it together." Her co-workers noticed her dedication, though not all of them understood it. "Why do you bother so much?" asked Rachel, a seasoned nurse who'd been at St. Vincent's for over 20 years. "He's not even awake," He probably won't remember any of this. That's not the point, Emily replied quietly, adjusting the blanket covering Alexander. The point is that he's still here, still fighting. And if my voice or my touch gives him even a tiny bit of comfort, then it's worth it. Rachel shook her head, muttering something about young idealism. But Emily didn't let it discourage her. If anything, it fueled her determination to prove that compassion mattered, even in cases where recovery seemed unlikely. There were moments, though, when doubt crept in. Late at night, after hours of tending to Alexander, she'd sit alone in the break room, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring blankly at the wall. What if I'm wrong? She wondered aloud one night. What if none of this makes a difference? But then she'd think back to stories she'd heard about coma patients waking up months, or even years later, remembering fragments of conversations or songs played during their unconscious state. Those stories gave her hope, no matter how slim the chances seemed. And so, she persisted. She read him poetry by Maya Angelou, telling him how much she admired Angelou's resilience. She shared funny anecdotes about her clumsy attempts at cooking, let's just say spaghetti should not be crunchy, and promised to bring him chocolate cake once he recovered. Sometimes, she'd sit quietly beside him, simply listening to the rhythm of his breathing. In those moments, she felt connected to him, not as a nurse and patient, but as two souls navigating life's uncertainties. Her sacrifices weren't without cost. Long shifts left little time for rest, and her savings dwindled with each tuition payment. Yet, whenever she considered giving up, she thought about Alexander lying there, fighting silently against the odds. I owe it to him, she whispered one evening, brushing tears from her eyes. To myself, too. Little did she know, her perseverance was about to change everything, for both of them. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind of day that blended into countless others for Emily. She entered Alexander's room as usual, carrying a fresh set of linens and a warm smile. The sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the sterile hospital bed where he lay motionless. Good morning, Mr. Heartwell, she greeted him cheerfully, placing the linens on a nearby chair. I thought we'd try something new today, maybe read a short story? Or would you prefer music? As she adjusted the blanket around his shoulders, something unexpected occurred. His fingers twitched. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. Had she imagined it? Slowly, she leaned closer, watching intently for any sign of movement. Then his eyelids fluttered. Oh my God, she breathed, rushing to press the call button for the doctors. Mr. Heartwell? Can you hear me? His eyes opened fully, though they were clouded with confusion. He blinked several times, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Panic flickered across his face as he tried and failed to speak. It's okay, Emily assured him gently, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. You're safe. You've been in a coma, but you're waking up now. Within minutes, the room filled with doctors and nurses, all buzzing with excitement. They ran tests, checking his vitals and asking questions to assess his cognitive state. Through it all, Alexander's gaze kept returning to Emily, as if searching for something familiar in the chaos. Later that afternoon, when the initial flurry of activity subsided, Emily returned to his bedside. She hesitated before speaking, unsure how much he remembered, or if he remembered anything at all. Do you know who I am? She asked softly, bracing herself for disappointment. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Your voice. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Yes, it's me. I'm Emily, your nurse. He nodded faintly, closing his eyes as fragments of memory surfaced. Her laughter, the music, the stories she'd told him about her dreams and struggles. It was as though her voice had been a lifeline, pulling him back from the darkness. I remember, he murmured, his brow furrowing with effort. You talked to me. Emily couldn't hold back the tears any longer. They spilled down her cheeks as she clasped his hand tightly. I did. Every day. I hoped you could hear me. The doctors were astounded by his progress. Coma patients often took weeks or months to regain full consciousness, Yet Alexander seemed remarkably alert. While physical recovery would still require time and therapy, his mental clarity suggested a miraculous turnaround. Over the next few days, Emily stayed by his side, helping him adjust to his new reality. She explained what had happened, the accident, the coma, the months he'd spent unconscious. At first, he struggled to process the information, overwhelmed by the gap in his life. But with each passing day, his strength improved, both physically and mentally. One evening, as they sat together in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, Alexander turned to her with a look of profound gratitude. "You saved me," he said simply, his voice stronger now. Emily shook her head, embarrassed by the praise. "No, I just did my job." "No," he insisted, his tone firm despite his weakened state. "You gave me hope when I had none. Your kindness, your belief in me, it brought me back." She smiled through her tears, squeezing his hand gently. "Then maybe we saved each other." In that moment, something shifted between them. What had once been a professional relationship transformed into something deeper, a bond forged through shared vulnerability and trust. Neither of them realized it yet, but this awakening marked the beginning of a journey neither could have anticipated. As Alexander grew stronger, their conversations became longer and more meaningful. Emily learned about the man behind the headlines, the driven entrepreneur who had built an empire from scratch but sacrificed personal happiness along the way. "I worked too much," he admitted one afternoon, staring out the window at the bustling city below. "I thought success would fill the void, but it only made me lonelier." Emily listened intently, her compassion unwavering. "It's never too late to change that," she said softly. "You're here now. That's what matters." For the first time in years, Alexander felt truly seen, not as a millionaire or a businessman, but as a person. He began opening up to her in ways he never had with anyone else, sharing stories of his childhood, his failed relationships, and the regrets that haunted him. In return, Emily shared pieces of herself, her struggles with student loans, her dream of becoming a doctor, and the sacrifices she'd made to get where she was. "You're remarkable," Alexander told her one evening as they sat together in the hospital garden. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. "Most people wouldn't have cared as much as you did, especially not for someone like me." "Someone like you?" she echoed, raising an eyebrow playfully. He chuckled, though his expression turned serious. "Someone who didn't deserve it." "That's not true," she replied firmly. "Everyone deserves kindness, Mr. Hartwell, no matter who they are or what they've done." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For so long, he'd lived by a rigid code of success and self-reliance, believing vulnerability was a weakness. But Emily's unwavering belief in humanity challenged everything he thought he knew. Their bond deepened with each passing day. Alexander found himself looking forward to her visits, eager to hear her laugh or share another story. And Emily, despite her professional boundaries, couldn't deny the growing admiration she felt for him. Beneath the wealth and status lay a man searching for redemption, and she wanted nothing more than to help him find it. One day, as they discussed her aspirations, Alexander grew quiet, lost in thought. "What is it?" Emily asked, noticing the shift in his demeanor. "Nothing," he said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about how unfair life can be. Some people work so hard for so little, while others are handed everything." She tilted her head, studying him curiously. "Why do you say that?" He hesitated before responding. "Because someone like you shouldn't have to struggle the way you do. You deserve better." His words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Emily felt a pang of unease, gratitude mixed with caution. She knew he meant well, but accepting charity wasn't in her nature. "Thank you," she said finally, choosing her words carefully. "But I'm proud of how far I've come. Struggles make us stronger, don't they?" Alexander nodded, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of determination. Whatever he was planning, he kept it to himself. For now, a few weeks later, Emily received a letter in the mail. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. A plain white envelope with her name typed neatly on the front. But when she opened it, her hands began to tremble. Inside was a formal document detailing a generous scholarship fund established in her name. All her tuition fees and outstanding student loans had been paid in full. The letter ended with a simple note. Believe in yourself as much as others believe in you. Your future is bright. No signature. No indication of who had sent it. Emily's mind raced. Who could have done this? She thought back to Alexander's earlier comments about fairness and struggle, but surely he wouldn't. Would he? The next time she visited him at the hospital, she confronted him directly. Did you do this? She asked, holding up the letter. Her voice wavered between gratitude and disbelief. Alexander hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for me. But this, she stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. This is too much. I can't accept it. You already have, he replied gently. And you deserve every penny. You've worked harder than anyone I know, Emily. Let me do this for you. She shook her head, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Gratitude warred with pride, and she struggled to find the right words. I didn't help you because I expected something in return, she said finally, her voice breaking. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's exactly why I wanted to help you, he countered, his tone firm yet kind. Because people like you, compassionate, selfless, determined, are rare. The world needs more of you, Emily. Let me give you the chance to shine. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, Emily nodded, wiping away her tears. Thank you, she whispered. But I promise, I'll pay this forward someday. He smiled, his eyes softening. I know you will. From that day on, their relationship evolved into something deeper. Though they both knew societal expectations would cast judgment on their connection, neither cared. Alexander admired Emily's strength and resilience, while Emily saw past his wealth to the man beneath, a person capable of profound change and kindness. As her studies resumed, Emily threw herself into her coursework with renewed vigor, inspired by Alexander's faith in her potential. Meanwhile, Alexander continued his recovery, rediscovering joy in life's simple pleasures thanks to her influence. Their bond became a testament to the transformative power of gratitude and human connection. What started as a nurse-patient relationship blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect and admiration. Months turned into years, and Emily's life transformed in ways she never imagined. With her financial burdens lifted, she graduated at the top of her class and began working as a doctor at St. Vincent's Hospital, the very place where her journey had begun. Her patients adored her, not just for her skill but for her unwavering compassion. Alexander, now fully recovered, returned to his business empire, though he approached it with a newfound perspective. He scaled back his workload, prioritizing relationships over profits. He donated generously to charitable causes, focusing on education and healthcare initiatives inspired by Emily's dedication. Their paths continued to cross frequently. Whether it was sharing coffee in the hospital cafeteria or attending charity events together, their connection remained strong. Though neither openly labeled their relationship, it was clear they shared something rare, a bond rooted in gratitude, trust, and mutual growth. One evening, as they stood side by side on the hospital rooftop overlooking the city lights, Alexander broke the comfortable silence between them. You've changed my life, Emily, he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. Before you, I thought success was everything. But you taught me that true fulfillment comes from connecting with others, from making a difference, no matter how small. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. And you gave me a second chance when I needed it most. You reminded me that kindness always finds its way back to us. They fell silent, watching the stars twinkle above the skyline. In that moment, they both understood. Their lives had intertwined for a reason, to heal, to grow, and to inspire each other toward greatness. As the years passed, Emily became a mentor to young nurses and aspiring doctors, instilling in them the same values she held dear. Alexander, meanwhile, dedicated himself to creating opportunities for those less fortunate, ensuring his wealth made a lasting impact. Though challenges arose, As they inevitably do in any life, they faced them together, drawing strength from their shared experiences. Their story became a testament to the power of compassion, humility, and second chances. In the end, it wasn't about wealth or status. It was about the moments that mattered. A nurse bathing a comatose millionaire, a voice reaching through the darkness, and two souls finding light in each other.